Teşekkür ederim. Merhabalar herkese. Ben İstanbul Aydın Üniversitesi İngiliz Edebiyatı yüksek lisans öğrencisi Fulya Bostan. Sunum dilim İngilizce olduğu için bundan sonrasında müsaadenizle İngilizce olarak devam edeceğim.
Hocam başlamadan hemen tam ekrandan çıkarsanız.
Tabii.
Sunum görünmüyor çünkü bir teknik aksaklık var.
Peki. Şimdi sorun yok zannediyorum.
Evet hocam, buyurun.
Teşekkürler. My study, titled as Addiction, Illusion and Nostalgia, Defense Mechanisms of Tennis Williams and Eugene O'Neill's Female Characters. This study examines female characters, Laura, Amanda of the Glass Menagerie, Blanche of A Streetcar Named Desire, and Mary of Long Day's Journey into Night, in terms of addiction, illusion, nostalgia as defense mechanisms. Freud's one of the most influential theories is personality theory. He states that human consciousness, which is a depot for emotions, deep and unadmitted desires, traumatic events and fears, come into being in early childhood. During this stage, child, mostly under control of it, only tries to satisfy its needs as soon as possible and does not think about whether its behavior is acceptable or not. However, later in development, the ego involves in and tries to ensure that the id needs are satisfied in a decent way, which is called the reality principle. Ego comes out of the id to help individuals dealing with the real world and to obey the reality principle. The urge of the id to satisfy its desires and manipulation of the superego, forcing the values of norms of the society, create tension in individuals. To reduce the tension and become mentally tranquil, the ego puts forth defense mechanism. The main focus of this study is the female characters who fail in adapting into the society they live in and employ illusion, nostalgia, and addiction as ways of defense mechanisms to cope with reality. Amanda of the Glass Menagerie is an old Southern belle, and she constantly talks about her days in Blue Mountain, how desirable, noble young lady she was, and her gentleman callers. She tries to get rid of the base abandoning of her husband and tries to restore her pride by retreating in nostalgia. Nostalgia becomes a way for her to conceal her anxiety and to deny her failure in marriage. Kaplan states that nostalgia should be viewed as a defense mechanism for coping with loss of self-esteem and restoring self-worth. Amanda's defense mechanism to cope with the harsh reality of her family, absence of her father, financial difficulty, Tom's drinking, smoking, and being away from home frequently, and Laura's disability, is denial. She does not want to accept that her husband left them, her marriage is a failure, and her children are not the people that she wants them to be. In fact, she is a woman who has been trying her best for her children in the absence of their father. However, she fails to see their miseries. Whenever they talk about their unhappiness or incapability, her defense mechanism, namely displacement, kicks in, and she distracts them by talking about her days in Blue Mountain. Laura of the Glass Menagerie is a fragile and isolated character. Because of her disability, she isolates herself from the society. She is exposed to her mother Amanda's pressure to find a gentleman caller and get married with him. However, she is not afraid of ending up alone. She is happy to live within the world that she creates with her glass figurines, which obviously represents Laura's fragility and purity. It's hard for Laura to meet a gentleman caller as she has a kind of social phobia. She feels more anxious when she finds out that they will have a guest who is her high school crush, Jim. She is not ready to be an object of desire as a woman. However, he encourages her to get out of the fantasy world that she is hiding in. For the moments that she was with Jim, she was not different from the other girls since he saves her from her peculiarity. However, after revealing the truth about Jim's engagement, she gives one of her glass figurines as a souvenir. It's like she is giving him a piece of her. Her glass collection is her defense mechanism to escape from reality. Her identifying herself with the glass figurines and living in her own world is called introjection. Laura escapes from reality to her own illusionary glass world and isolates herself since illusion turns into a way of dealing with stress for the characters. as Evan mentioned. Disappointment makes Laura escape to her glass world to feel safe like her mother Amanda's escaping to her past glorious southern days. Employing escapism as a defense mechanism is common in Williams' writings, as Ella Kell explains in his article. Escapist perspective is adopted by his characters, who usually suffer from oppression as they face the ugly face of the reality of their world. Blanche of Streetcar Named Desire is an English teacher, an old Southern belle. She has lost her family estate and her job and has been casted away from the town because of having an affair with one of her students. Since she has no money, no option, she goes to Stella Kowalski's, her sister's. During her stay at Kowalski's, her traumas, alcohol addiction, her obsession with light, batting, and fancy outlook are revealed to the audience through her struggle with Stanley, her brother-in-law. Blanche longs for old glamorous Southern days, and she reflects it with her fancy dresses and her hyperbolic attitudes. What strikes the audience about Blanche at first is her fancy dresses and her inflatedness, which emerge as defense mechanism as well. Blanche is a woman who pursues her desires, as the title of the play suggests. However, she has to repress her sexual yearnings to be accepted by the society. She seems she is being crushed between her sexual instinct driven by the id and the fear of condemnation of the society driven by the superego. As a defense mechanism, her ego implies repression. Although she acts like she is the epitome of Southern belle, who is supposed to be pure and chaste, she is in a way compensating her failure in sexual relationship with her homosexual husband with sexual relationships and flirtations with different men, which is another defense mechanism called compensation mechanism. Blanche's avoidance from direct light and constant lies about her wealthy suitor can be related to her defense mechanism against reality as well. She is afraid of getting old and worried about her fading beauty, as she thinks the only way out of this trap is to attract a suitor that will marry her. Instead of accepting the natural cycle of human life, she rejects it and employs denial mechanism. She lies about her age, puts a paper lantern on the light bulb to dim the lights in her room so as not to be seen clearly. Whenever Stanley questions her about her past, she denies everything and talks about her fantasies that she creates for herself. She tells Stanley that there is a millionaire who desires to marry her, which is a total fantasy of her to be rescued by a rich gentleman. In her illusionary world, she is a desirable Southern belle waiting for her millionaire suitor to take her away. Her drinking problem is also a defense mechanism for her to cope with the reality. As her superego manipulates her, she feels to violate the moral principles of the society and acts like a cultivated, aristocratic Southern belle. When she feels she is losing control of herself, she drinks and escapes into the original world. Distortion of reality is the most significant defense mechanism of Blanche. Our last character is Long Stay Journey into the Night's Mary. Mary frequently employs escapism, denial, projection, displacement, and regression as defense mechanisms against the ugly reality of her life. Like Amanda, nostalgia of her old convent days is a way for her to escape from Edmund's illness, her dysfunctional family, and her addiction. The more she feels restless, the more she uses morphine. When she is under the influence of it, she constantly regresses to her past. It's a way for her to cope with the reality of her family's misery. By escapism mechanism and regression, which is the reversion to behavior, thoughts, or feelings appropriate to an early stage of emotional development, nostalgia becomes a kind of shield for her. The past is like a double-edged knife for her. It's her way of defense mechanism against reality, and it also represents all the things she lost and repented for. Escaping from reality is not the only defense mechanism of Mary. She employs denial, projection, and displacement as well. By saying it's an only summer cold, she denies Edmund's consumption with the fear of losing him, as she has lost her father due to this disease. She denies to acknowledge the possibility of losing another child. Since she cannot cope with the unpleasant reality, she employs a denial mechanism. When it is not enough for her, she returns to using morphine. She feels guilty about morphine and needs to deal with the self-guilt. Then she starts to put the blame on the others for her addiction to defend herself, which is another defense mechanism called projection. In terms of her morphine addiction, to avoid her family's apprehension, she changes the subject and distracts them, such as talking about her hair, which is also a defense mechanism called displacement. In conclusion, the play studied in this paper portrays psychologically deep female characters. The female characters have so much in common, such as failing in adapting to the society, struggling to cope with reality, and employing similar defense mechanisms such as escapism, denial, projection, displacement, repression, compensation, isolation, introjection, and regression. They affect these mechanisms through illusion, addiction, and nostalgia. Dinlediğiniz için teşekkür ederim.